One of the technologies making fintech headlines is blockchain. It was high on the agenda at this year's MIT Solve event, an initiative from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I sat down with one of the world's brightest innovators and MIT Solve finalist, Deanna MacDonald. She's the CEO of BLOC, which develops blockchain products. And I started off by asking her why she became an early adopter.
I think a large part of what I was interested in was the bottom-up governance networks that were forming throughout the world related to blockchain, whether it was the digital currencies. Bitcoin was the first network that I really came to understand, and kind of watching how it was forming from the ground up, how people had come together from all walks of life without necessarily even having their identity known, but knowing that they were creating actually a comparable or an alternative, market for currency and for an alternative currency that we could utilize in many different forms. But then I think mainly I was interested in this distributed network of technology, this peer-to-peer interaction where we could actually have verified states of information and actually trust the information that we were sending to each other, as well as the different applications that we could build with it. I'm an application developer, and I immediately just had so many different areas I wanted to take it in. So more than anything, I'm drawn to the early stages and the experimentation that's happening and just watching it all unfold and being a part of the innovation as well.
Now, as you mentioned, for most people, their first introduction to blockchain was through Bitcoin. And it wasn't under the best of circumstances, and a lot of people really don't understand how to separate the two. So for people who just want to get it super clear in a nutshell, how do you define blockchain and why does it matter?
There's a lot of definitions, and it means a lot of things to a lot of people. We predominantly look at it as a way to attest to the state of things, or to take information that's being transferred and essentially have a record of that. That record is stored in a ledger that everybody maintains, so you can trust the data itself once it's in the system, and how you use that is, I think, essential. So one method of, one application, and the first one that did come to the market was Bitcoin. And that, of course, is to provide a digital currency without the need of an intermediary, such as a bank, because the transactions are validated and verified in the network, and all of that is stored in a place that everybody can find it and maintain it. And in that respect, you can take that principle and that concept and you can apply it to anything from supply chain information with multiple stakeholders that contribute to it, where we normally have middlemen such as brokers or forwarders or supply chain finance entities. You can take it into the context of carbon registries and how we can create carbon markets where we can validate and verify the transactions. But the basic components of verification, of essentially distributed shared resources, and the ability to be able to validate an entire network and those that participate in the network is really the components of blockchain that I find to be the core principles, at least.
And what do you think is really needed to make blockchain more relevant for everyday people so that they can really connect those dots between understanding uses for blockchain beyond things like digital currencies?
I think pragmatically, the way to distinguish what's happening on the ground from what's more on the conceptual level still is that there are few implementations where actually we're tracking and we're tracing things. So using it for traceability seems to be the first foremost application of blockchain itself. So digital currencies are one thing and cryptocurrencies are one thing, but to utilize blockchain for traceability seems to be the actual implementation that at least we've been using and that we've seen in the real world as well.
How do you think governments and society should be preparing for some of the ways that blockchain will disrupt things, not just socially, but economically as well?
Well, I think they have a very crucial role to play in the development of policies that help to create and foster the innovation that is happening, rather than the stifling of the innovation through making, and casting early stage judgments as to how we'll be using this technology. I think there's something around the innovation ecosystem that governments have a role to play. Likewise, I think there's there is a role in developing these technologies with nation states, with governments, and to utilize them on a global level as well. So this is the very acute value proposition of digital anything, but especially digital verification systems or transaction systems such as blockchain and cryptocurrencies, is it allows you to localize something to a global or even a national level, and then to a global level as well. What happens when we also take into account how we can connect these in the digital world. And on that respect, it does facilitate not only nation states working together with the communities that are trying to implement blockchain to also develop this for different government services, for example. You can see that in several governments that are looking into management of identities online, of government services, where you can essentially use blockchain as the verification and the underpinning of that. But you can also see it in the case of that being brought to the nation state level. What happens if we implement it into a voting system? And likewise, how do we then create new markets together with other countries and kind of the intergovernmental level as well? There's many different areas in which governments can be involved and nation states can be involved. But I think really pragmatically it means, one, fostering and allowing this innovation to continue to thrive. It also means to take a proactive regulatory role as well, become involved, have a lot of roundtables where you're bringing the experts and the practitioners to the forefront, getting that kind of advice on the ground as to what's happening, and allowing regulations to kind of evolve with that. And lastly, it's about co-creating with the community as well, bringing forward the problems that governments have and seeing if there is an area where blockchain can help, because it doesn't solve all problems and there's a lot of work to be done yet.